Let's start with Ghost of Tsushima. From the moment you start playing, it just feels like you're stepping into this beautifully crafted world. The island of Tsushima is stunning, with these rolling hills, forests, and temples scattered all around. And the way the wind guides you instead of using a mini-map, that was such a cool touch. It makes you feel like you're part of the world, not just playing a game. The combat is another thing that I couldn't stop thinking about. It's so fluid and satisfying. At first I was a bit nervous because samurai combat can be tricky, but the way it's designed here feels so intuitive. You switch between stances depending on who you're fighting, and it just flows so well. Every sword fight feels like it has weight. There were times when I would stop and challenge a group of enemies to a standoff, just because it felt so epic. You literally feel like a samurai. Speaking of feeling like a samurai, the story really pulls you in. It's all about Jin Sakai and his struggle between upholding the samurai code and doing what needs to be done to save his people. It gets you thinking, you know? Like, what would you do in his shoes? Would you stick to the rules or adapt to survive? The game really leans into that inner conflict, and I found myself getting attached to Jin and the other characters, especially his uncle. The emotional moments hit hard, and let's not forget the duels. Oh man, the duels. Some of the most intense moments in the game for sure. You face off against these really skilled enemies, and it's just you, them, and your sword. Next we have Silent Hill 2 Remake. I've got to say, it totally nails that eerie, unsettling vibe that made the original such a classic. I mean, Silent Hill 2 is already one of the most iconic horror games out there, but this remake, it's like they took all the stuff that creeped us out back in the day and cranked it up with these incredible graphics and sound design. The foggy town of Silent Hill looks absolutely gorgeous in this remake. Well, in a terrifying, twisted way, of course. The way the fog moves, the way the shadows creep along the streets, it's so atmospheric. Walking through those empty, run-down streets, you can just feel the tension building. I caught myself hesitating before turning corners, just bracing for whatever nightmare was waiting around the bend. The monsters are just insane. Pyramid Head is back, and just as horrifying as ever. Seeing him in high definition? Yeah, it gave me chills. And the sound design makes it even worse. In the best way. You'll hear these distant, unsettling noises, and it just puts you on edge the entire time. The sound of the radio static kicking in right before a monster appears still gets me every time. What I also love is how faithful the remake is to the original, but it also adds some nice quality of life improvements. The controls feel smoother. The combat is a little more refined, but it still keeps that you're not some action hero vibe. Every encounter with a monster feels dangerous, like you're barely scraping by, which is exactly what you want in a horror game like this. If you're into survival horror at all, or if you loved the original, you've got to check this out. Next we have Sekiro. I went in this game expecting something similar to Dark Souls, but nope. Sekiro has its own thing going on. It's all about timing, parrying, and mastering patience. You can't just hack your way through this one, but when you finally land that perfect parry, or take down a boss that's been wrecking you, it's the most satisfying feeling ever. The combat is so tight and precise. I love how it's focused more on skill than stats. Every fight feels like a proper duel, especially with that posture system. Instead of just slashing away, you're breaking down their defense to land that killer blow. It's a challenge, but man, when you get the rhythm down, it's amazing. And that grappling hook, dude, it's such a game changer. You feel like a legit ninja, zipping around trees, rooftops, and sneaking up on enemies from above. I can't count how many times it saved me from getting killed. It just makes exploring the world way more fun. Speaking of the world, the whole setting in feudal Japan is stunning. The environments are so detailed, from peaceful bamboo forests to war-torn castles. Every area has this mysterious beauty to it, and as you explore, you start piecing together the lore, which is so From Software in the best way. Now, I won't lie, Sekiro is hard. It can be brutal, but in a good way. I've died more times than I care to admit, but each death feels like a lesson. You can't just rush in. You've got to learn your enemy's moves, find their patterns, and perfect your timing. And when you do, it's like reaching some kind of gamer zen. Next we have Days Gone. I'll admit, when I first heard about it, I wasn't expecting too much, but once I started playing, I got hooked. It's one of those open-world games where you get so lost in the world that hours just fly by. And let's be real, who doesn't love a good post-apocalyptic story with zombies? Or I guess freakers in this case. The thing that stands out to me the most is the world itself. Oregon, but post-apocalyptic. It's both beautiful and terrifying at the same time. You're riding your bike through these gorgeous landscapes, like snow-capped mountains and dense forests, but you know danger is lurking around every corner. It's such a cool mix of peaceful and intense. I remember just cruising down the highway at sunset, only to get ambushed by a freaker horde or a pack of wolves out of nowhere. Speaking of the bike, Days Gone really makes it feel like your best friend. I know it sounds weird, but you're constantly upgrading it, maintaining it, and using it to get out of some really tight spots. Running out of gas in the middle of nowhere, with freakers closing in, is one of those moments where you're like, okay, this is serious. But when you've got your bike tuned up and ready to go, it's an absolute blast to just ride through the wilderness, wind in your hair, dodging obstacles and escaping enemies. And then there's Deacon. I didn't expect to get so attached to his story, but as the game went on, I really started to feel for the guy. The freaker hordes, though, insane. The first time you run into one, it's pure panic. I'm talking hundreds of freakers coming at you all at once, and you have to figure out how to take them down, or just run for your life. Next, we have Warhammer Space Marine 2. Honestly, I had pretty high expectations going in, especially since I loved the first game, but this one really blew me away. I just finished it, and I'm still buzzing with adrenaline. If you're into anything Warhammer or just a fan of solid, brutal action games, this one hits all the right notes. Right from the start, I was hooked. You jump back into the boots of Captain Titus, and let me tell you, they've cranked everything up. Titus feels like an absolute force of nature, and the game really nails that power fantasy of being a space marine. Every time I smashed into a group of Tyranids, it felt like I was carving through them like a god of war. And these Tyranids are terrifying. The way they swarm you, it's a mix of pure chaos and strategic survival. Speaking of strategy, the game's combat is deeper than it looks at first. Sure, you can charge in swinging that chainsword and ripping through enemies, but you've got to think a bit too. You can't just button mash your way to victory, especially with those massive bosses. They've got these intricate patterns, so it feels like a dance between brute force and tactical moves. When I finally took down one of the bigger enemies after like 15 minutes of dodging and countering, it was such a satisfying moment. I felt like I earned that victory. And the story is more than just a mindless shooter, that's for sure. There are moments where the weight of war, the cost of being a space marine, really hit. Titus's arc feels more fleshed out this time around. He's not just a badass in power armor, but a character you actually care about. Next we have Resident Evil Village, another game that could have easily taken the Game of the Year title, but somehow didn't. And honestly, that's kind of surprising because when Village dropped, it felt like Capcom had found the perfect balance between horror, action, and just downright weirdness. One of the standout things about Resident Evil Village was how it mixed elements from both Resident Evil 7 and the more action-heavy style of Resident Evil 4. You had the creepy, atmospheric horror from 7, but then they threw in these larger-than-life characters and set pieces that screamed RE4, Lady Dimitrescu. Instantly iconic. She had the internet buzzing for months before the game even came out, and her castle felt like this throwback to the gothic vibes of older Resident Evil games. But what made Village special was how it didn't stick to just one type of horror. Each section of the game felt different. You had survival horror with limited resources in some areas, and then you'd go into full-on action mode with tons of firepower in others. And let's not forget the Beneviento house. That whole part was straight-up nightmare fuel. It felt like Capcom was experimenting with different horror subgenres, and for the most part, it totally worked. There was also the story. Resident Evil games have always been known for their over-the-top plots, and Village didn't disappoint in that regard. 2021 was a tough year for competition. It Takes Two ended up winning Game of the Year, and while it's a great game, it's a totally different vibe. Next we have Devil May Cry 5. This game is just pure action-packed insanity. From the second you start, it's all high-energy, over-the-top combat, with Dante, Nero, and V, just going off in their own badass ways. The combat is smooth as hell, and juggling demons in the air while pulling off combos? So satisfying. I mean, it makes you feel like you're some rockstar demon hunter every second you're playing. And can we talk about the characters for a second? Dante is, of course, the legend, and his attitude is just as cocky and hilarious as ever. But I gotta say, Nero's new arm mechanic is awesome. You can pull off so many different moves with his Devil Breakers, and it adds a whole new layer to the combat. I love how every arm has its own unique feel, whether you're blasting enemies or zipping around the battlefield. Then there's V. At first, I wasn't sure what to think of him, but his combat style is so unique. Controlling demons to do the fighting while you hang back? It's weird at first, but when you get the hang of it, it's pretty damn cool. He's like this mysterious, edgy dude, but in a fun way. The boss fights, though? Incredible. Every boss has this epic scale to it, and the game is great at making each fight feel intense without being frustrating. And the way the music kicks in when you're doing well? That's gotta be one of my favorite parts. The dynamic soundtrack literally gets better the more stylish you get, so it's like the game is rewarding you for being awesome. Honestly, DMC5 has some of the tightest, most fluid combat I've ever played in an action game. It's just so responsive. Next we have Assassin's Creed Syndicate. Honestly, this game is one of the most fun entries in the whole Assassin's Creed series. I feel like it doesn't get talked about as much as it should, but the second you start running around Victorian London as Jacob or Evie Fry, you realize just how much of a blast it is. Syndicate nails the feel of 1860s London in a way that's just incredible. You've got the foggy streets, the towering landmarks like Big Ben and the Houses of Parliament, and that gritty industrial vibe where factories are pumping smoke into the sky. The attention to detail is nuts. You can literally ride horse-drawn carriages through the city or scale the rooftops and just take in the view. It really makes you feel like you've been dropped right into that time period. And the fact that you get to switch between two protagonists, that was such a smart move. Jacob and Evie have totally different vibes, and it keeps things fresh. Jacob's all about getting his hands dirty and brawling with enemies, while Evie's more of a stealthy, strategic assassin. I loved switching between them, depending on the mission, or how I felt like playing. And the sibling dynamic between them is just great. The combat in Syndicate feels super smooth too. It's fast, it's brutal, and it's a lot of fun, especially when you're just diving into a group of enemies and throwing punches. Plus, the new grappling hook? Total game changer. 1 second you're on the street, the next you're ziplining across rooftops like Batman. It's the most fun I've had with movement in an AC game for sure. At the end of the day, this game is just fun. It's not trying to be overly serious or bog you down with too many mechanics. Next we have Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales. This game is just pure fun. I thought Insomniac nailed it with the first game, but playing as Miles? It's like they cranked up the cool factor. From the moment you start swinging through the city, you feel that difference in Miles' style compared to Peter. He'd got that younger, more energetic vibe, and the way he moves those little spins and tricks mid-swing just makes it so satisfying to swing around New York. The story got so much heart. You can really feel the weight on Miles' shoulders, trying to live up to Peter's legacy, while figuring out what kind of Spider-Man he wants to be. He's got this personal connection to Harlem, too, and that adds a really nice, grounded layer to everything. It's not just about saving the city. It's about protecting his community, his friends, his family. I felt way more connected to his journey because of that. Plus, the combat is so slick. Those venom powers, absolute game changers. It never got old to just zap a group of enemies with a venom punch and watch them go flying, and combining that with his stealth abilities made for some really fun, creative fights. I'd go from sneaking around, taking out enemies one by one, to just leaping into the fray and unleashing chaos with his electricity. The combat just flows so well, and it's super satisfying to pull off those combos. Even though it's a shorter game compared to the first one, I honestly didn't mind. It felt like the perfect length for Miles' story, and I loved every second of it. And the ending? Without spoiling anything, it just left me feeling hyped for what's next. Next we have Cyberpunk 2077. I know it had a rocky start, but seriously, it's a totally different game now after all the updates. The world of Night City is just wow. I mean, if you love getting lost in a huge, neon-lit, gritty open world, this game is perfect. It feels alive, you know? The city's got this cyberpunk vibe down to a T. Dark alleys, giant holograms, futuristic cars, the whole Blade Runner kind of thing. And honestly, I love how the game doesn't shy away from showing the messier side of that world, like the clash of high-tech and low-life. V, the main character, is super customizable too. I spent way too much time tweaking my character at the start, like more than I'd care to admit. But it's fun to play with all the different builds, whether you want to go full-on hacker, cybernetic brawler, or sneaky assassin. Plus, the augmentations, dude, that's the coolest part. You can literally replace parts of your body with cybernetic enhancements. Who wouldn't want a built-in katana arm or optic implants? What's crazy is how the story can change depending on what you do. Like, the choices really feel like they matter. There was this one mission where I was trying to decide whether to help these corporate types or betray them, and man, I was stressing over it for days. I couldn't stop thinking, what if I made the wrong choice? But that's the fun of it. There's no right or wrong answer, just how you want to play it. I will say the driving can be a little wonky at times, but honestly, once you get used to it, it's not that bad. Plus, the city's so massive, it's fun just cruising around, taking in the sights. Next we have The Evil Within 2. If you've played the first one, you know it's already got that creepy, nightmarish vibe, but this sequel, it takes things to a whole new level. How it blends open-world elements with that tight, survival horror tension. You've got more freedom to explore this time, but it never feels too safe. Even in the open areas, there's this constant sense of dread, like something could jump out at you at any moment. And trust me, the game knows how to play with your nerves. The enemies in this game are wild. Some of the creature designs are just pure nightmare fuel, like that multi-limbed thing guardian. Still gives me the creeps just thinking about it. And don't even get me started on the bosses. Every encounter feels intense and nerve-wracking, especially since resources are still pretty scarce. You've got to be smart about when to fight and when to sneak around. The open areas give you more options for how to approach situations, which I really liked. Sometimes it felt satisfying to sneak by enemies unnoticed, and other times you'd have no choice but to go guns blazing. The game forces you to be adaptable. The story is solid too. It's got that psychological horror aspect that really messes with your head, but it also wraps up a lot of the loose ends from the first game in a satisfying way. And I've got to say, there are some twists in there that genuinely shocked me. It's not just about the scares. It's a good narrative experience too. And of course, the crafting system is back, so you can make your own ammo and gear, which really adds to that survival feel. Next we have Final Fantasy XV. This game definitely got its fair share of criticism when it first launched, but honestly, it's such a gem once you dig into it. A lot of the hate stemmed from expectations, especially from longtime fans of the Final Fantasy series. People wanted it to be a certain way, and when it turned out to be a bit different, it threw everyone off. One of the big controversies was about the story and how parts of it felt, well, incomplete. A lot of fans felt like there were pieces missing, and to be fair, they're kind of right. Square Enix did add DLCs later to fill in some of the gaps, which helped a lot, but I get why people were frustrated. And then there's the combat system, which definitely divided people. It's way more action-oriented than older Final Fantasy games, which threw some fans off. Instead of the traditional turn-based style, you're zipping around the battlefield, warping in and out of combat, and timing your attacks in real time. Personally, I think it's a blast. It feels fast, intense, and once you get the hang of it, there's a real flow to the battles that's so satisfying. Plus, you get to use all these cool weapons and powers, and switching between them mid-fight keeps things exciting. I get that it's not everyone's cup of tea, but it brings a fresh energy to the series, and if you go in with an open mind, it's a lot of fun. Final Fantasy XV gives you this huge, open world to explore, and it's stunning. You're cruising around in your car, the regalia, discovering gorgeous landscapes, stopping at outposts, and finding hidden treasures along the way. Next we have Prey. This is one of those games that should have been a hit, but for whatever reason didn't catch on like it deserved to, and honestly, it's a real shame. Now, the controversy with Prey, it starts with the name. A lot of fans of the original Prey from 2006 were upset that Arcane's game had the same title, but was basically a completely different thing. There was no connection to the original Prey, no Tommy, no spirit abilities, none of that. So, right off the bat, some people were mad because they were expecting a sequel or continuation of the original, but Arcane went in a totally different direction. But if you put that aside and judge Prey for what it is, it's actually one of the best immersive sims out there. Arcane is known for crafting amazing worlds. The level design is just insane. You've got all these interconnected areas, and the way you can approach situations, whether you want to sneak, hack, fight, or even turn into a coffee cup. Yeah, that's a thing. Gives you so much freedom. And let's talk about the Typhon, the alien enemies in the game. The mimics are probably the most memorable. These little guys can disguise themselves as everyday objects, so every time you walk into a room, you're second-guessing everything. Is that chair just a chair, or is it about to jump at me? It adds this constant tension that makes the whole experience so gripping. Combat can be pretty tough, but it's rewarding. The glue gun is such a cool weapon. It's not just for fighting, but you can use it to create platforms and block hazards. That's what's awesome about Prey. Next we have Dark Souls 3. This game is like a test of your patience, skill, and determination, but in the most rewarding way. It's tough, no doubt about it, but that's what makes it so satisfying. If you're into games that push you, Dark Souls 3 is an experience you won't forget. First off, the world. The atmosphere in this game is just something else. Every area feels heavy with history, like the ruins and castles you walk through have seen centuries of battles and chaos. There's this haunting beauty to it, you know? You're walking through these desolate, crumbling places, but at the same time, they're gorgeous. It really pulls you in, like you just want to explore every corner, even if it means getting your ass kicked. And speaking of getting your ass kicked, the combat. Man, it's brutal. But once you get the hang of it, it's like a dance. You can't just go in swinging like in other games. Timing, dodging, and learning your enemy's moves are key. Every fight, whether it's a basic enemy or one of those insane bosses, feels like a challenge that you're either going to conquer or get humbled by. One thing I love about Dark Souls 3 is how it respects you as a player. It doesn't hold your hand or give you a bunch of tutorials. You're just thrown into this dark, dangerous world and expected to figure it out. At first, it's super intimidating, but you start picking up on little things. The lore, how the world is connected, the strategies you need to survive. It's almost like you're part of a secret club where you learn by trial and error, and the payoff is huge. So yeah, Dark Souls 3 is tough, but that's the point. Next we have Nier Automata, one of those games that didn't exactly explode onto the scene when it first launched, but ended up becoming a cult classic. If you've never played it, at first glance it might seem like just another action RPG. But this game much more than that. It's one of those titles that, once you dive in, completely pulls you in with its depth themes and that emotional roller coaster of a story. But here's the thing. When it first came out, not a lot of people were talking about it. Sure, it had fans, but it didn't immediately blow up like some big AAA game. Part of that might be because the original was kind of niche and never really became a mainstream hit. So it had this uphill battle where people weren't sure if it was worth checking out. The game is weird. And I say that in the best possible way. It doesn't hold your hand, it doesn't give you a typical RPG experience, and the story can get really out there. You've got androids questioning the meaning of life, robots acting like humans, existential dread, and more than a few mind-bending plot twists. For some players, it was a little too philosophical. It's not afraid to get deep and ask big questions. And that can be off-putting if you're just looking for a straightforward action game. Then there's the whole multiple endings thing. It doesn't just have a single ending, it has like 26 of them. Now, most of those are joke endings, but to get the full story, you actually have to play through the game multiple times, seeing it from different perspectives. Some people love that. It's one of the game's strengths, but others didn't really want to replay the same sections to uncover the whole narrative. It was divisive, to say the least. Next, we have Subnautica. This game is a total gem for anyone who loves exploration, survival, and a hint of mystery. You start out stranded on an alien ocean planet. There's this incredible mix of wonder and tension as you explore. It's like the game is always pushing you to go a little bit deeper, a little bit further, just to see what's out there. One of the things I absolutely love about Subnautica is how it nails the feeling of discovery. The ocean is vast, and filled with all sorts of creatures, plants, and places that are as beautiful as they are mysterious. Every time you dive, you're uncovering new things that make you feel like a real explorer. And even though it's underwater, the world feels so alive. From shallow coral reefs that are bright and colorful to the darker, deeper zones that get way more intimidating. It's all crafted with so much detail. You've got to manage your oxygen, food, water. It's challenging, but in a way that feels fair and really keeps you on your toes. There's something so satisfying about scavenging for resources, crafting equipment, and upgrading your gear as you go. Slowly building up your tools to explore deeper and farther feels super rewarding. It's like every small success is a huge win, and you get this incredible sense of progress. And the creatures? They're incredible. Some are friendly, just minding their own business, but others? Well, let's just say there are a few surprises in the deep that make your heart race. The game does this brilliant job of making you feel small, like you're just one tiny part of this huge ecosystem that doesn't necessarily care about you. Next we have the Callisto Protocol. It's from Glenn Schofield, one of the co-creators of Dead Space, so if you know that series, you can expect a similar intensity here, with a unique twist that keeps things fresh. One of the things I love about this game is how it creates tension. It's not just jump scares, though there are a few really effective ones. It's that constant feeling of dread. You're almost always low on ammo and health, so Every encounter with the twisted, mutated inmates of this prison feels like a struggle to survive. The combat is brutal and up close, forcing you to really get in there and make every swing count. It's not your typical action game where you can just spray bullets and move on. Here, you're scraping by with whatever resources you can find, and it adds so much to the immersion and intensity. The combat is visceral. There's this raw, almost primal feel to it. The melee system in particular is pretty unique for a horror game. You actually have to get in close to bash these creatures, and it's terrifying in the best way. You're not just standing back with a gun. You're practically fighting for your life in every encounter, which makes the experience that much more intense. What really stands out, though, is how the game creates this balance between horror and sci-fi mystery. Sure, you're dealing with terrifying creatures and survival, but there's also this big, intriguing story underneath it all. Why did everything go wrong on Callisto? What's causing these transformations? The game does a great job of feeding you bits and pieces of the narrative as you go, making you want to keep pushing forward. Next, we have Manor Lords. It's got a perfect mix of city building, real-time strategy, and historical vibes that make you feel like you've been dropped into the Middle Ages. It's not just about plopping down buildings and calling it a day. You're designing a real, functioning town that has to deal with things like resource management, seasonal changes, and the happiness of your villagers. And then there's the economy. Balancing your resources is a challenge, but it's the good kind of challenge. You'll be growing crops, trading goods, and figuring out how to survive through the winter without your people starving. It feels incredibly satisfying when everything clicks, and you see your little village thriving with bustling markets and happy villagers. It's like, look at my kingdom, I did that. But wait, there's more. Combat. Oh yeah, Manor Lords isn't just about peaceful town building. There's also real-time strategy for those of us who want to flex our military might. The battles feel epic, with soldiers marching in formation, archers raining arrows, and cavalry charging in for that dramatic finish. It's not overly complicated, but it's strategic enough to keep you on your toes. Plus, the scale of it all feels just right. You're not commanding thousands of units, but it's big enough to feel like a real medieval skirmish. One thing I absolutely love about this game is how much freedom it gives you. Want to focus on being a benevolent lord who builds a prosperous town and trades with neighboring regions? Go for it. Want to be a conqueror, expanding your territory and crushing anyone who gets in your way? Totally an option. If you haven't tried it yet, do yourself a favor and jump in. Next we have V Rising. So, right off the bat, you start as a weakened vampire who's just woken up after a long slumber. Your first goal? Rebuild your power, avoid sunlight, and, of course, drink a little blood along the way. The survival elements here are a unique twist, since they're all woven around classic vampire lore. Staying out of the sun isn't just an aesthetic choice. Sunlight will literally kill you in seconds if you're caught out. So every move you make is strategic. You're ducking between shadows, planning your hunts at night, and it gives the whole game this great layer of tension. It's rare for a game to make you feel so vulnerable as a powerful vampire. But V Rising pulls it off in such a clever way. There are forests, eerie castles, haunted villages, and a lot of places just begging to be explored. And it's not just about sightseeing. As you explore, you're gathering resources and materials to build up your very own castle. Yes, you get to build your vampire lair. This becomes your home base. And you can customize it however you like, filling it with coffins, crafting stations, and all the gothic decor you can dream up. The castle building aspect adds this fun, creative twist to the game. Combat is another area where V Rising really shines. It's not just hack and slash. There's actually a lot of skill involved. You have a range of vampire abilities you can unlock, like dashing around enemies, summoning dark magic, or even transforming into different forms. It's fast-paced and feels super satisfying. Next we have The Sinking City. It's one of those games that totally pulls you into its weird, Lovecraftian atmosphere. I'll be honest, I wasn't sure what to expect going in. I knew it had that detective vibe, but once I started playing, I realized it's so much more than just a mystery game. The setting is such a huge part of what makes it special. Oakmont, the flooded city you're stuck in, feels like a character itself. It's dark, twisted, and so mysterious. The whole city has this oppressive vibe, like it's barely holding itself together. And then you throw in all the supernatural stuff. You're constantly on edge, wondering what the heck is going on. It's the kind of place where even the NPCs feel off. They're all a little too weird, you know? The detective mechanics are super satisfying, too. It's not like most games where you just follow a waypoint and the answers are handed to you. You actually have to think in this game. You've got to piece together clues, figure out where to go next, and sometimes that means wandering around, checking your map, and just solving things on your own. I found myself getting so immersed in the investigations because it feels like you're the one figuring it all out, not just the game spoon-feeding you answers. One thing I really appreciated was the freedom in how you handle investigations. You're given choices that affect the outcome, and there's not always a right answer. I remember one case where I had to decide whether to trust this cult or expose them, and both options felt equally shady. It's that kind of moral ambiguity that really makes you think, and I love that.